Okay, after a few interruptions, I'll start this video again. We're looking at the MLS, and is the MLS really popular in the US? Well, I would say it is. How popular? Well, it's expanding. So, Atlanta was the new team this year, and they've done really, really well. They're drawing fans. This season coming up, 2018, Los Angeles has a second team. If the MLS was not drawing fans and was not making money and was not getting the TV revenue, it doesn't expand. It doesn't. They now have two conferences, they have 23 teams. So if the MLS was really not that popular, why are there 23 teams? I look at the locations, and there's only one or two that I have a few, okay, this could be a relocation jobby in a few years' time. And every location they have chosen has got Major League Sport in it, or has in the past supported ice hockey, basketball, American football, baseball. It has supported major or even minor league, but it has supported pro sports before. Portland, it actually is I think in Portland it is possibly the biggest team in Portland, the biggest league in Portland, because it's the major league. And Portland has lots of minor league teams, only major league teams. So in Portland, they're leading the way. I have a few concerns about most of the Western Conference, or most of my concerns are in the Western Conference, with the West Colorado Rapids, Minnesota, Real Salt Lake, and there's one team in Canada in the East Conference in Montreal that I have concerns about, thinking this may not work. Every other city, they've decided they've got some good rivalries going. They've got Dallas and Houston rivalry. They've got an LA rivalry. They've got a Portland Seattle rivalry, and you could put San Jose in there possibly as a midway between LA and Seattle and Portland. Kansas slap bang in the middle. So they've worked out pretty well. The Montreal one I don't really understand, and Minnesota, those are the two I really don't understand. I can understand Real Salt Lake because you've only got the Utah Jazz. It's a very untapped sports market. There are people in Salt Lake City. It's the biggest urban area for miles around. If they can support a whole state, can support the Utah Jazz, they can support a football team, and it's at altitude, which is their advantage as well. So it's a little bit cooler, hot summer, you can get away with it. The Colorado Rapids, I again, you've got the Avalanche. That's ice hockey. They're very successful. You've got the Denver Broncos. You've got the Nuggets. It's a summer sport when all the others are winter sports. So you could tap into that fan base having nothing to do in the summer, nothing to support, maybe. But I have a few concerns. The biggest one is Minnesota, and then Montreal. Two massive hockey. Well, Minnesota's also got American football as well. Two sports markets that really I don't think soccer would work in. I can see them at some point. Yeah, you got to be moved. The only reason I can see Minnesota there is a rivalry with Chicago, but they're in different conferences. That's where I'm like, okay, this is now making limited sense. And the fact that Chicago is an Eastern Conference here, but in other sports is in a Western Conference, again, I'm like, okay, where's the team in Detroit then? If you want to have a rivalry in a Great Lake rivalry, you've got one in Minnesota, it's fine. Why is Chicago in the other conference? That's one where I think, okay, this is making limited sense. But all told, if the MLS was not drawing, or was not being successful, why is it expanding? So there's obviously a fan base there. There obviously is. And the New York rivalry they've set up, the Red Bulls and FC, is brilliant. I've seen the footage online. It is, whoever came up with that idea is a genius. Putting three teams in Canada was quite an interesting move. Vancouver and Toronto, they can have rivalries within their conference. Montreal I don't quite understand, but Toronto can have a good rivalry with any of the New England or the Rust Belt teams. They really can. They're tapping into a massive sports market. Toronto itself can support, in fact the wider Toronto metropolitan area can support multiple teams, and does. The Women's World Cup was recently held in Canada to great success across the whole country, from Vancouver to Toronto, Winnipeg, you name it. They pulled it off. Obviously the Men's World Cup was held in '94 in the US. The women's US team is a brilliant side and regularly is basically winning it. He's won everything. It's the Brazil of men's football, is the women's team. The men's team, unfortunately, did miss out on World Cup qualification this time. So, an issue that needs to be addressed. A lot of American players have now come back from Europe to play in the US. Brad Guzan is an example. He used to play for Aston Villa in the Premier League. He has now come back to play for Atlanta, so he's come back to play for less money as well. That is interesting to know. There are rules on how many foreign players an MLS team can have in the marquee department. I think there's a rule that states most have to be Canadian, American, or Mexican. There is a limit on foreign players in the league. The locations they've chosen already have sports fans and have fan bases of other teams, and they will support. Whether they can get enough to come in and mix it up. LA Galaxy are the most successful team in the MLS, and David Beckham helped to sell that image around the world. He now is very interested in getting a team in Miami, which will be a natural rival for Orlando. So we will see if he can get a second team into Florida. That is his goal. That is his objective. He's trying to get momentum for that. Obviously, Los Angeles and Atlanta have got in there before him, and that is a bit worrying. But the idea is David Beckham will have his own franchise in Miami. So we'll see on that. But they have chosen their locations quite well, I think. The locations they've chosen are quite interesting. But there's a big gap in the middle of the US where there is no teams, and Canada. There's no teams in the middle. So the East-West Conference has some big travel distances. That's an issue that the league needs to look at, possibly expanding into the Midwest more. Kansas is sort of the team in the middle of the country. There's no team in Oklahoma. There's no team in Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri. There's no teams here in these states. There's nothing. So if you want to become nick fans from other sports or get in there before another sport does, you've got to look at these cities. They've gone into Kansas, which is a great idea. But then there's just swathes of the US where there's no soccer played at a high level. So that's an issue. There's nothing in Vegas. Vegas suddenly now is becoming, right, okay, they're getting the Raiders. I think they're getting an NBA team as well. The Golden Knights have just really sold what you can do with an untapped market with Vegas. They've really showed what you can do. The whole city is buying in. And everyone says that's going to fail. I don't think so. If the whole city are buying in and they can't sell enough tickets, like people just can't get tickets. To get a ticket is impossible for a game. They sell out like that. As soon as the game is announced and they're playing, and their tickets go on sale, they sell out quick. So I'm surprised the MLS hasn't thought of Vegas. I can understand, yes, it's in the middle of a desert, but at the same time, they haven't got a team in Arizona yet. You've got ice hockey and American football, and in the Cardinals and the Coyotes in Arizona. Different levels of success, mind, but they are there in the Phoenix area. So I'm surprised they haven't tried to get a team into Arizona at some point. Again, big sports market, big university. The Cardinals are reasonably successful. The Coyotes have got the playoffs before, so I'm again surprised they haven't thought, okay, let's try here. The Texas rivalry between Houston and Dallas is a genius move. I think the NHL are kicking themselves for not awarding that NHL franchise to Houston. They've gone to Seattle, and that mucks up the Western Conference and the divisions a little bit. So MLS got in there before another sport could. Brilliant. They're following NFL, basically, who did the same thing. They've got in there, they've realised it worked for them, it could work for us, and it has. Having a second team in Los Angeles, the NFL have recently moved two teams, the Chargers and the Rams, from San Diego and St. Louis into LA. MLS was there before with LA Galaxy, and now they've started an expansion team. There is a rivalry going on with several sports in the Los Angeles area. LA suddenly has become it's already a big sports market. Now every team wants to get two teams there. You could class the Anaheim Ducks as the second team in ice hockey in the LA because it's basically a city in LA County. You could class it as that. So this is getting interesting. Every sport wants to have two. You've got the Clippers and the Lakers. You've got the Ducks and the Kings. You've got FC, Galaxy, Chargers and Rams. LA seems to be a two-franchise city. Same with New York. Again, they follow other league models. It works. The issue I have is the league started quite late comparatively to the NFL, to the NHL, to the NBA, to the Major League Baseball. These leagues have got themselves established. the league's got themselves some fandom and some history and sold the image. These leagues succeeded where other leagues in their sport failed and they had to merge or went out of business. Soccer in North America has had a checkered history. The professional leagues before in North America in football, our football, did fail. The women's version of the MLS did fail. So it does have a checkered history. However, you've got to look at the men's side being so consistent qualifying for World Cups until this one. So you've got to look at, okay, the team needs to rebuild, start again. Also bear in mind, half their team are based in Europe. So you've got to select a team from the US and Europe and try and combine them. It's difficult. You've got to look at the fact that the women's team has been really, really good, and that's a selling point. So women's football in the US has been brilliant for a long, long time, and has been very successful. There are some negatives and some cons. Where is the MLS at? It's behind the other big major league sports. But look at the areas where it hasn't put a franchise. Do you know what happens in those areas? In Virginia, in Arkansas, parts of Florida, North and South Carolina. Again, big sports markets. NASCAR, in especially in the southeast of the US, and I would even as far away as Vegas. Vegas has a speedway. Always fills out. Phoenix has a speedway. Some of the cities where they have not selected, such as Richmond, Virginia, prime area for sport. No team in North and South Carolina. Got Raleigh and Charleston. Nope, no team. No team in Arkansas. Okay, there's not much in Arkansas, but it's a thought. Atlanta, Georgia is the only team in the deep south, as I would call it, the southeast of the US. Because Florida, I would class that as a more metropolitan state, but in that part of the southeast United States, so they've avoided going to a big area of the US where it could succeed. They really have avoided, and they've only dipped their foot in it with Atlanta. They're missing out on a huge sports market there, and that's where NASCAR is popular. Or NFL. They haven't chosen Birmingham, Alabama. They haven't chosen New Orleans. They haven't chosen what else? Miami yet. They haven't chosen Charleston, Charlotte, Richmond. There are a lot of cities they've missed out. They could have chosen and got in and really had a go, but then it would unbalance the conferences. But they still, if you look at it, NASCAR's very popular in those areas. So that's where they're missing out. They haven't got the league big enough yet. It's a summer sport. Most of the other sports I mentioned are winter sports, so they could nick the TV revenue. They could get a fan base, because this league is played in the summer in the US, when our leagues are off. They play it in the summer. But I also notice every North American sportscast, be it American football or ice hockey that I watch, they advertise English Premier League games and Champions League games every ad break. They will go, on Eastern in the Premier League, so and so versus so and so, in the Champions League, so and so versus so and so, in Italian Serie A, German Bundesliga. A lot of it's mostly English Premier League, but they do advertise the other European leagues, so they're clearly trying to tap into that fan base. So there's a lot of football advertising. That's a good plus point. The thing is, it's very difficult to get friendlies between an MLS team and a European-based team, because the league is played in the summer, our league is played in the winter. Issue. They could try and do a friendly between a US team and a South American team. We could think of Corinthians, Boca Juniors. They would get slaughtered, but they could do it. We have taken a lot of our pre-season games to the US, and a lot of fans turn up. Same with rugby. That's another sport. London Irish have played a game over in the US. The Irish national side play the All Blacks in Chicago, Soldier Field. The US Rugby League and Rugby Union sides are now getting into those World Cups and playing at the Olympics. So again, minor sports to the Americans, which are major sports to us, can be sold and can gain fans. And there is a rivalry, because Canada play Rugby League and Rugby Union, and these two nations hate each other when it comes to sport. When it comes to friendliness, yes, but when it comes to sport, when it's Canada US, there is some kind of something switches on in the North American mind, and they go nuts. But I look at this league, it is a lot smaller. The NFL, bigger. NHL, bigger. NBA, bigger. MLS, Major League Baseball, Major League Baseball, bigger. NASCAR, yes, it's more national now, and they do have speedways all over the US, but in the areas that this league has not gone into, bigger. There is a speedway at Atlanta, and Atlanta is a massive sportsman city, but they haven't gone to Vegas, they haven't gone to Phoenix, and those are two big cities that the NHL and NFL have got. Because the Oakland Raiders will be going to Vegas in a couple of years, so they could have got in there before Golden Knights with the ice hockey, before the Raiders got relocated, and they didn't. So that's where they could be making a fatal error, is missing out on the Vegas, Phoenix sports markets. They're big cities, they're large cities, they've got sports fans already. Vegas has shown it can support a natural sport for the environment. They're getting an American football team as well. So the MLS might have made an error there, but because the league is actually looking quite healthy at the moment, they are expanding, and that is a sign that the league is healthy. But how well is it supported? That is a question that, needs to be, fuck it.